Hello, friends. My name is Steve, and we're here today to discuss Volume 10 of Berserk, and that is in Deluxe Edition 4, or you can be OG like Joe over here with his OG versions. Dan, you probably have the OG versions, right?
I have some Italian versions, but not all of them.
So we'll get into it. We'll be talking spoilers, so if you haven't read it, then you may not want to watch or listen. Dolores, will you kick us off with introductions?
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you might be joining us in the world. My name is Dolores, and I am excited to be here with my fellow book readers to discuss today's Berserk edition, right? So,
Yeah. And Joe?
I'm JCM Byrne. I'm author of Wistful Aside. I have a copy of Berserk, but I don't have a copy of my own book. So that's how good I am at marketing. And I have my own YouTube channel, Book Burning. Everyone should watch it. Well, not everyone. Someone should probably watch it, though.
You are terrible at marketing. Joe has a great channel. Go check it out. Everyone should
you
go watch.
should check it out. Yes,
Yes.
definitely a recommend. 2 thumbs up.
Someone on Twitter was like, "Oh, I've heard only good things about your book," and I'm like, "I'll share some bad reviews with you, even out your opinion." And they're like, "Wait a minute, it's really dumb. Why would I do that?" So I didn't actually do it, but I thought about it.
Oh, Joe, don't do that.
I don't want expectations to be too high. You know, that's the secret to like life and romance is lowered expectations. That's what I always say.
It's kind of depressing, but okay. Dan, give us an uplifting, positive introduction.
My life is going great, I guess. I don't know. My name is Dan, and I'm a big fan of manga and grim dark fantasy, so this is kind of my bread and butter. And yeah.
Nice. And of course, Varsha.
Hi, I'm Varsha. I have a YouTube channel called Reading by the Rainy Mountain, which I'm currently severely neglecting, but I'll get back to it in a few weeks.
There's it'll be pretty busy here soon, so I don't think you have to worry about that. Yes. Yeah. So volume 10. What did everyone think about this one? Any thoughts to start off with? Not all
I was trying to remember, because I have such a terrible memory, whether that worm that came to visit Griffith, sorry, is the same as the one we saw before, the Count who got sucked up into the demon maelstrom. It's the same dude, right? Or at least it looked similar. Yeah. And there were some other familiar looking ones as well.
You're talking about the little demon things?
There was this one that looked like a snail slug thing that looked a lot like the Count.
Oh, yeah. In the forest.
Yeah.
I think it pretty much looks the same.
Yeah, I guess this one didn't actually visit Griffith, but I mean, it showed up. I don't remember to whom.
No, it's the other like small slug thingy, deformed slug thingy that visits Griffith, right?
Yeah.
But we also saw that before.
I suppose we have, yeah.
A couple of times, I think, actually.
And I wondered if Griffith will ever get to take his helmet off from this point on.
Do we want him to?
I don't know if I want to see what's underneath there.
Yeah, because as Femto, he has his helmet on.
Maybe it's part of his body at that point. I don't know how demons work.
Well, and we don't know what the torture dude had done to him. I mean, he kind of alluded to some of the things he did, but who's to say he didn't like burn it onto his skin, sort of like the Iron Mask.
Yeah.
What was that one classic book? I can't think of it, but
The Man in the Iron Mask.
Yeah. Or if you saw G.I. Joe, I don't know, the early 2000s. Do you remember at the end where the arms dealer Again, yeah.
I like how your references just span the gamut of literature.
I know. Well,
Monte Cristo to G.I. Joe
the
film.
G.I. Joe film where the guy's face literally was like turned into like metal. And I can't even think of his name.
I forget his name.
Oh, what
Snake
was
Eyes,
it?
was it?
He was the arms dealer. He was
The
he
villain,
was this
right?
guy- He was one of the villains, and he becomes you know what? I gotta look for his name now. Well, at least in this movie version with Chatham Tate. What is it? Chatham Tatum. I know. Sorry, I'm so bad at these movies right now.
G.I. Joe #1 was one of the first comics I ever bought.
Oh, was it the Rise of the Cobra? I'll figure it out. But anyways, but I mean, like literally, we don't know if it's been like seared to his skin, right?
Well, we saw that they can open it, so at least we know the front is not like attached to him. And he did say that he did like cut through his face to his muscles and stuff like that. He did like explicitly say that. Right.
Yeah, and his tongue was cut out. I was just like, okay. Yeah. This guy was really a sadist. It was just kind of gross.
And it was interesting that he hasn't been blinded. It didn't look like it, at least. But everything else was out. I found this lug thingy. This guy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's the same one we saw just before we started the Golden Age, right?
I think so. Unless there's copies of it. But
yeah.
Up to now, all the demons seem fairly unique, I guess. You know, there might be some copies. But...
The Count seemed to have been possessed by that demon, so I don't know, maybe they can change bodies or something, or maybe this is the Count. Yeah. Yeah.
I did have to laugh in the first few pages when Guts has this big long speech about how he's he wants to have his own thing, and you know he wants to go off, and she just laughs at him like, you know.
Yeah.
That was pretty funny. She tells him, "It must have taken all the brains you have." That was so grandly spoken.
Yeah, because in the end he says that what he wants to do is just go on his own and fight on his own, pretty much.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, I'd forgotten about that. I read it last week and didn't reread it again, but yeah, that was hilarious. And I was also laughing to myself because, you know, there's like a what is this, a 4 or 5 page sequence of Guts meditating with his sword.
He was becoming one with the sword.
He's got to open his own studio, sword meditation. A bunch of executives come in, giant sword, you know, everyone sits around. But this again, this notion of going off and like training and becoming like a better swordsman for its own sake, it fits into that Japanese tradition. Like it's really reminiscent of like the storyline of Vagabond, which is Miyamoto Musashi's history of like just his life was. He was exonerated for a life where he basically all he did was like get really good at like swordsmanship in a country which was not at war, and get really good at beating other guys in duels. And he's like one of the most famous and revered people from that period of history, which I feel like in the West it's a little weird, but it's very Japanese. And this is what Guts is saying he wants. He wants to be a wandering dude, and you know he doesn't quite go dojo busting. But like in the last volume, right, he's not quite at that level. But in the last volume, you know, he's going on entering contests, fighting the toughest guys just to see if he can beat them. You know, it's very close to that. Go into the dojo and like, who's the toughest guy here? I'll fight him. You know, but that's sort of respected in that culture, and not maybe I'm not saying it's not respected here, but maybe it strikes. It's a little weird to a modern Western sensibility, but it's not. I don't think it would strike people reading manga in the 90s or 2000s as crazy. We've seen that before, lots. So he's like the Miyamoto Musashi of giant swords.
Of giant swords.
It just seems to me that he could be doing the same with the Hawks, really, and that would be really the same, to be honest. But
I think he wants to go and like be like recognized and get the notoriety as just him, and then come back and say, "Look, Griffith, like without you, I still beat up a lot of innocent people
yeah,
in the name of my sword." I don't know.
He does say that he will never allow someone else to wield his sword in future, that someone else's dream to let him wield the sword, and that seems to have been born of his thinking back to Gambino. Yeah, I think this bit right here, this, I don't know if that's
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
yeah. So I feel like maybe his time on the mountain perhaps helped him realize that he's just sort of like zombieing through with the sword, but now he wants to do that with purpose.
And if he does it this way, he's not like killing any kids,
mm,
right? He's not like murdering people like who are like sneaking around telling secrets and just he's fighting like other people who are in it for the fight. Like there's a different moral component to what he's doing. He's not really like he's not just ambushing random strangers. He's going to contests where other people signed up to be in the. It's like a professional fighter almost. And I don't know. It's fun.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's more of a choice, right? Like
Yeah.
people choose to fight each other. It's not because they've been put into that situation, right? Again, the other idea of like, is this free will, right? Do we have the free choice to decide what we do with our futures?
Yeah.
And so we do learn, well, when they're going down to rescue Griffin, we do learn the story of Supreme King Gaiseric? Is that
Supreme King. Yeah.
And he looks awfully familiar.
The skeleton.
does.
The skeleton knight. Right.
Yeah, I've been trying to remember where have I heard that name, because I've heard that name before. Gaiseric. Like from history. I don't remember. I don't know if it's like some Gallic chieftain or maybe later, but I do remember it's something pre-medieval. I don't know if it's relevant or if he just thought it was a cool name. But the ruins that we saw there in the pit, they look like Roman or Greek or ancient at least.
He ruled a kingdom. He established and played a key role in the decline of the Western Roman Empire during the 5th century. Through his nearly 50 years of rule, he raised a relatively insignificant Germanic tribe to the status of major Mediterranean power.
Oh, the king of the Vandals. Now I remember. Okay. Oh. Yeah. I wonder if that was... Maybe he just thought the name was cool.
Maybe.
And it is, but I like it. But yeah, it's... I guess we get a bit more context as to maybe who he might be. Maybe. But what his role in the story is, it's not like, what does he want? Why is he still around?
Yeah. How did he... I suppose the creatures that came to visit Griffith, do you think they are from the dead of that kingdom? And do you think the Skeleton King escaped somehow and the others are still stuck there, but they are coming to visit Griffith because he's down in there with them?
No, I mean, I think we can almost for sure know that it's got something to do with a previous ritual, because we see the corpses and we see the mark that we saw previously. So we know that there's a lot of them, so it must have been something big. And I don't know, you can speculate, who knows, maybe he, based on the story, maybe he sacrificed a bunch of people to become the king, right? That could be one of the reasons. Or maybe someone else did something to usurp him, and that was the ritual, so we don't really know.
The brand is the mark of sacrifice, isn't it? Or am I remembering that wrong?
Yeah, no, because remember when the count had to decide, and it had to be somebody that he loved, right? Or is that just only specific to
someone
Like-
important. I think it has to be like someone that's like you have to lose a part of yourself almost, right?
Yeah. So I mean, there's a lot of people at the mark. So how close were they to whoever sacrificed them? Or maybe there were many people like, oh, look, I'm going to sacrifice you.
It was a bunch of people doing the ritual.
Mm-hmm. Well, and what's pretty significant too is the name of the actual tower, right? Like the Tower of Rebirth. So, like, what is being reborn there? It wasn't like the Tower of Doom or like, the end of the times. I mean, it's like the Tower of Rebirth. So, I don't know. You could like look at you could put some similarities or some symbolism to even that name itself, right? Like, what's being reborn here, and like what's still hiding in those deep deep taverns and tunnels. Because I don't know, rebirth usually sounds, optimistic, right? Like there's some sense of positivity, like you're coming from the ashes to be reborn. But I don't know, you look at this place and it's just doom and gloom.
Yeah. And Skeleton Knight does not look very alive.
Yeah.
Is that maybe what he did the ritual for, to be
Yes. That picture, yeah.
I'm very embarrassed to admit that I did not notice that mark at all on all the dead people. I see it now. It's there. It's fairly obvious to see.
Yeah.
I did a double take. I didn't notice it at first, and then I was going to turn the pages like, oh, that looks familiar.
Yeah. It's like there. We have these constant reminders that the mark is somewhere to be seen, I guess, or to be found.
Yeah. So it's interesting that there are that many people, though, because, yeah, what you all said earlier, it needs to be someone important. It's impossible that one person had that many important people to sacrifice. Or was it a mass sacrifice thing where many people sacrificed those important to them and became slugs in varying shapes and sizes?
or are they stuck in some other dimension, right? Because you would think that if you've been marked to actually face death or to be, to like die would be like paradise, right? You're no longer bound to this like evilness, like you're finally free. So it's it would be, kind of nice to know what happened to them, but maybe we're not supposed to know that right now.
Yeah.
I mean, we kind of know a bit.
Yeah.
Because we've seen a bit of that, and it doesn't look like paradise. And again, it depends what the cosmology or metaphysics of your world is, right? It doesn't have to be a good thing. Maybe everyone that dies just goes to hell. Steve, you might have some information about that from some other book series, but
or they go to purgatory where it's just like this eternal hell, right?
Yeah.
But I mean,
don't know.
But eventually Guts gets this mark on him, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know, it feels like he almost wants to die, right? Because maybe death would be the escape and the true freedom, right? Even though he might go to hell, but at least, he knows where he's going. But I don't know. We don't know how. I guess we'll just have to wait to the end to see how that gets resolved.
Well, we don't see a lot of other people walking around alive for a long time with the mark on.
That's true.
I mean, what's this defining characteristic is that will to struggle regardless of how shitty things are. He does not relent, and that's the first thing Griffith noticed about him. That's his defining characteristic, is that stubbornness. That's will to fight, right? So he's walking around with the mark, and we see people in the first few volumes, and people recognize him. Like, you're still walking around with that thing? Like, we thought you should be dead by now, and it's like, no, because it's Guts. So these guys probably didn't last very long with that mark, I would imagine. And then when you die, don't you join that maelstrom thing we saw when the Count was going to sacrifice his daughter? That all part of that like sea of like faceless suffering or something?
Yeah.
It's a very lovely afterlife.
He chose that instead of sacrificing his daughter.
Yeah. So I'm feeling that's where these guys are. Unless we learn more in the future, which I don't know.
But everything we know about it is from the 5 big demon guys said. I don't know if I think they've said it's called hell or something, but again, we don't have any proof of anything, right? We just know there's a maelstrom with souls of dead people in it, I guess. So maybe we'll get more information later. But yeah.
I wish I remembered. I don't.
Yeah.
Remember?
No idea.
So this, sorry, I think Dolores mentioned another dimension, but we've seen this before, right? Guts in some fainting spells found
Oh, yeah.
himself in a strange walled place like this.
Yeah.
I remember it happened just before the killing in the cart, I guess, when a bunch of demons attacked him, if I remember correctly. But yeah,
I
I'm
like how
also
it's go ahead, sorry.
go ahead, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I like how it's all like sort of Escher like geometries and architecture,
Mhm.
and you're supposed to be like, oh, this makes no sense spatially or geometrically, or if there's no up and down and anything.
Yeah.
And yeah, we've seen it before too, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And he so this skeleton slug dude says we seek an audience with you and calls Griffith, oh blessed king of longing.
Mm-hmm. Where they even call him a prince, right? When those little creatures come out of the wall,
Mm-hmm.
and he
Yes.
thinks he might be having a hallucination, so you don't quite really know if it's real or not. But they do call him a prince, so it's like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, prince of what?
Yeah. I mean, I think Griffith thinks that it's a hallucination, but we probably know by this point that it's likely not, right?
Mm-hmm. It's the
Yeah.
Godhead, right? Isn't this what they
Yeah.
would call them? The Godhead
God hand, I think.
or God Hand?
Yeah.
Yeah.
God hand. Right. Interesting. Is God hand a play on God head, but just using a different part?
I think you're gonna see why we're called that like that. Yeah. Shows it pretty explicitly. I'm thinking in 3 volumes or something.
Okay.
And that's
I don't
fine.
know if it showed it before when they went into the dimension before. I don't think so, but yeah.
Mm,
There's 5 of them, right?
yeah. Yeah, we did see them all just before the count, just before we started the Golden Age. I think that was the last thing we saw before the Golden Age started. With
Trying to find that
Yeah.
section. I wonder if the translation is the same in my volume.
which
But I'm
one?
not
I
quite-
don't know.
The Blessed King.
Yeah, because remember we found a translation change.
Yeah.
My edition from yours, and now I read this a week ago, and I don't remember what they said.
It's towards the beginning of the volume.
This of us, the unforgiven. That's also interesting, I suppose. We sort of had a sense of that before. That they are the ones who'll go to hell. But is it of their own doing? Do they become like this because they are unforgiven? That is interesting too.
I don't know. That's also interesting because I guess it depends on what your theology is or what your philosophy is. It's like in some theologies, you have to choose to be damned, right? It has to be
Mhm.
for your own actions, and in some other ones, someone else can make you,
Mhm.
damned. Can make you do an action that you didn't realize would be the effect. But I guess in more Christian theology, you would have to know to willingly do a thing which is bad to
Mhm. Yeah,
go to hell.
that's
Uh,
interesting. Yeah, sorry. Go
It's
ahead.
the intent. No, I was just going to say it's the intent, right? Like, did you intend to do some malicious act? Did you intend to take that action? Like, you have to actually know what you're doing and have the intent of doing it versus like if you're just kind of going along with it, right? And have no idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, in a lot of ancient, I guess, religions, a lot of time you can be tricked into doing the wrong thing, and then you just go to whatever equivalent of hell or whatever the gods don't like, right?
Or you're asked for forgiveness or other ways to redeem yourself.
Yeah.
in this world, it feels like the sacrificer and the sacrificee both are damned. So I guess it's a mix of both of what you said. You choose to be damned, maybe. I mean, you have to keep up with with whatever you did to make yourself immortal or whatever. But and if when you stop, you get sucked into the maelstrom. But also, the people who bear the brand also are sort of doomed, right, or damned.
It's a metaphor for capitalism. You either sacrifice the other people, and then you are damned, but you're at the top of the heap damned, or you don't, and you're still damned, but you're bottom of the heap damned.
That seems fair.
Never thought of this as a economics lesson, but
Did you
So
find
many
the
different-
translation?
Almost every work of fiction can be interpreted as a critique of capitalism in our society.
Yeah.
but my translation is the same.
Okay.
Blessed King of Longing.
Okay, it's the same.
If anyone else was curious.
No, but that's nice to know that there are some of the translation hasn't been changed. But it'd always be interesting to find the spots where they're different. Okay, I had a question. So the king, the old dude,
hmm
at one point he says summon, what is it, the Bakiraka,
Yeah.
like that group. I'm like, okay, so if you had this group of like, mercenaries, why didn't he just go and ask them to do stuff instead of the bed of the hawks? It's like,
But
you
the
already
same-
had this group, right? So
the same
like,
thing happens at the end, right? With the dog people, the dog whatever.
that
Black
other night,
something.
Wyleth, or
And he's like, now shit's getting serious. Get the dog nights out. I'm like, dude, like you kind of could have used them before. It's like you're
exactly.
making this up as you go along because that's what it feels like.
But I don't know. I mean, given we know what what they're like. I mean, I can understand not using them before, given what what they do and what
And they were
and who
part of
they
the
are.
army. You'd think you would have sent them into that fortress before you'd send the White Knights. The Band of the Hawk.
Yeah.
Maybe.
It feels a very kind of ad hoc. Like, what else can I throw in here? It's like,
Well,
And
That's
only a very
exactly.
small group of assassins, though, and the band has
Yeah.
hundreds of soldiers. So
Yeah, but they seem like they're the elite. Like you send in the elite when you need them.
mm,
Why didn't you send the elite in earlier? Now you're like, what else are you holding out? What else you got?
how have we not seen them before? Like we've seen like pretty
Yeah.
gnarly situations for Midland. How have we never mentioned these guys?
Yeah.
okay,
All of a sudden,
yeah.
it's like,
Well, maybe they did something, but nobody knew, right? Because in theory they're assassins, so if nobody knows about them, they're doing the job well, I guess.
and then they're like on hand. Like that's the other thing that I found weird.
Yeah.
I believe if you have to like send for them, like send a pigeon and summon them from a distant land. But
Pigeon.
they're like what, they're hanging out in his guest wing because like during the breakout he says summon the Baccarat and they show up like an hour later. Like
Mm,
where do you keep these guys? They're kind of creepy, you know.
They turn on like the bat signal.
That's what it feels like, right? Yeah. Like,
They send like smokes. They do the smokestacks thing, right? Oh, we're being summoned. We've got to go now. I just found that really. I mean, even if they had just mentioned them a little earlier and said, no, we don't want to deal with them because they're just evil. We only want to deal with the Band of the Hawks. I think I would have been okay with that because then there would have been some explanation. But to just throw this into the mix, like, what? Who are these people? Why are you only using them now?
as a writer, I feel like it feels like he was getting to this point and he wanted to throw in some action scenes to slow the pacing.
mm,
Yeah.
Right? You don't want everything to wrap up in 2 volumes. So, and from here, I remember the rest of this arc feeling to me padded and slow. Not bad, but you'll see because you guys are going to be reading the next 5 volumes and you can disagree with me.
Mhm.
But
You probably will.
yeah.
Just kidding. I'm just joking, Joe. We love you. Our friend J.R. Carroll is here. Maybe he didn't want to throw his strongest assets into the field in case the other ones were holding back as well.
We'll see.
And the
mm.
Yeah,
order
that's
of
a fair.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
the Order of the Black Dog Knights. It kind of played to me like as a typical action movie when the villain keeps throwing wave after wave at the hero. Like, okay, good, send the stronger people in now, and so it's kind of like it kind of building, you know. So it kind of seemed like an action movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's just the natural progression of a story, right? Like, oh, we're gonna mix it up and throw this one in.
Yeah. Yeah. It did feel like
Oh.
okay, let's have one really big guy who throws javelins and one really skinny guy and then one guy who like hides under the water and like a hot chick to do something else. It's a little lazy. I mean, it's fine.
I mean, it was also serialized, right? So I don't know that you could go back and fix things that you add later if
Right,
it was.
right.
Um,
And the king aged poorly in that year.
Mhm.
I think the stress probably aged him a lot.
Yeah.
I was
It's very
trying to
stressful.
remember if I didn't remember just how withered his face was before, but I guess
And that was
yeah.
a hard year for him.
Yeah. Well, we've seen in Berserk for how how he uses just facial structure and body shape and everything else to transmit information,
Mhm.
right? And to reflect the interior character, or to deceive us into thinking that they're one type of people instead of they're a different type of person. So we've seen him use it as a storytelling mechanism, I guess.
Mm.
It's not just like they're normal people, and you can look whatever and can be whatever inside, and there's no correlation.
If you have an egg-shaped head, you're a bad person.
Probably,
Let's
yeah.
just-
In the world of
get it.
Berserk. You know? So,
The tyranny of the egg-shaped heads.
yeah.
Yeah, and we've seen like the more deformed they look, like the more they've been kind of not great people up to
Yeah.
now. So probably the aging of the king is just meant to show the corruption and the decay
Yeah.
of his soul, sort of.
I mean, he's clearly had some kind of collapse after, molesting his daughter, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
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 Dan, I think you make an excellent point about the moral decay, right? Because you can see the actual decaying of his body.
Mhm.
Yeah. Or maybe that's how it is in this world. In this world, if you're a bad person, you start changing outside.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Your
Reverse
egg
picture
turns
of
into an egg.
Dorian Gray.
Yeah.
Well, look at the people that are surrounding the king, though. They're young and they're innocent, right? So they haven't had a lot of, I guess, instances where their souls become corrupted.
Yeah. It's also a good contrast between him and his daughter, right? Like it's an even more striking contrast.
That's right through into the movie.
It's so true.
Yeah.
I don't know. You see him with two young, very like innocent looking and pretty attendants, and I just think this guy is a known pedophile. I mean, who else is he going to have as an attendant? But that's me.
Yeah.
I don't
It's
know.
not. I don't know.
So we talked about the Bakiraka, and maybe they had other reasons to not throw their best assets at them. But then he also has the Black Dog Knights, who has a very creepy seeming leader. They also were nowhere to be found in the battles before.
I think there's a reason for that, but we haven't gotten into those chapters yet. But I might be wrong. That's just my reasoning. And I think a lot of it, I can justify it in the sense that we have to realize we're in a feudal society in which each, the king is on its own like a feudal lord, and it's got lieges, and other people who swear fealty to him, but they have their own, estates or baronies or whatever, which sometimes are in conflict with the king. And in history, we've seen a lot of times even they can just be in open warfare against the king. So it's not just like it's one monolithic empire, just like it would be, I don't know, post Renaissance, like post Enlightenment or something. It's more of a collection of different small states, right? So maybe the king doesn't want to use his own best troops, and he wants to use his feudal lord's best troops, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we've seen in the discussion when we talked about attacking the fortress, we're like, well, nobody wanted to do it because they're going to lose their soldiers.
Mm.
And they're like, well, if you want Griffith to do it, sure, go for it. But you're not going to get any help.
Yeah, that
But
makes
that's
sense.
at least how I justify it.
Again, another lesson in economics, right? How many resources are you willing to lose?
Yeah.
Right? Demand and supply. Okay. Well, if we lose them, that's okay because we still got other people. So again, managing your resources, right? From it.
Yeah.
And
But here's the thing. I'll say this and then I'll stop whining about it. Wild, the leader of the Black Dog Knights, is very much not human looking.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah.
Both like inhuman levels of strength and stuff. And yet, in the preceding like 4 or 5 volumes, we have no hint that people like this exist. When they see what's his name, the guy with the horns,
Zod?
yeah, like
Yeah, so
they're like, I've never seen anything like this before. My mind couldn't conceive of this as a possibility that someone could be this strong. And this dude's apparently been around the whole time. Everyone's like, oh, the Black Dog. They're not saying, what are the Black Dog Knights? You never heard of them. They're saying, not them. Those guys are jerks, right? They all know these people, right? They've presumably fought alongside them in wars. And like, this guy does not look human. And yet when we've seen other non-human things, everyone's like shocked. And now this guy's been there all along. So I'm like,
Is he really non-human though, or just a very strange-looking human?
well, they sort of say like he's like a beast. There's something. How does he say it? That man called Wylod. There's something strange about him. He's
Mm.
like a beast.
I don't know.
yeah. It's sort of like a bit like a Neanderthal, it looks like.
Yeah.
But I mean, we've seen other weird looking people. Even the Bakiraka look kind of weird. If you saw them in real life, you would be like, that's, I mean, you wouldn't see them in real life because they wouldn't exist. Like the body proportions are all wrong. So to me, at least, looking at that, it's like within the realms of acceptance, sort of. It's like borderline, but it's like, I'm like thinking, is there something extra on him, or is he just weird?
Mm.
He's got the normal assortment of like limbs and features, right? He's got like 2 eyes,
Yeah.
2 ears. I see. Yeah, I'll buy that.
It's very exaggerated, and you'd be like, there's something weird about this guy, but it's not like it's so outlandish compared to some other things we've seen before. And Zod, when he transforms, is like even before transforming, people didn't, they're like, oh, this is insane, but they weren't like, this is magic or a demon or whatever, right?
Yeah. It's only
Other
after he
transforms,
transformed
yeah.
that we saw like horns, and that's
Yeah.
like, okay, that's not normal. Before that, he was just an unusually big dude. All right,
Yeah.
I'll buy that.
Well, but if you look at how he's actually introduced, right? So on the very next page, after that particular knight says he's like a beast, the very next page you see him, engaging in very lustful activities, and so it seems like the way that certain people are portrayed are drawn that way. So here we have a beast that cannot control his own lust, and that he's just sort of like uncontrollable, right? Wild. And so it kind of adds to his own character, at least through the way he's illustrated, right? Because he's a beast. So beasts are kind of like wild and uncivilized and heathens that can't control their own, I don't know, lust, like I keep saying, but
yeah. And I assume there's a lot of, like you said, because people seem to know about the black dogs, so there's probably a lot of people talking about them and rumors flying and saying, oh, this guy's like a beast or whatever. But again, we also have to remember, put ourselves in medieval Europe, and there's people telling us, oh, I went to India and there's people with wings instead of arms, right? And that was a legit thing that people said. And, some people are like, yeah, sure. And some people are like, oh, yeah, it's real. There's super weird things outside of Europe. It's like fantastical beasts, right? We see them even in historical texts, right?
People thought Jews had horns, and there were Jews in Europe, and they thought Jews had horns.
Yeah, so it's like probably people think about, like, they say, oh, I saw a demon. It was like and people believed it, just like people believed it in in our own not in our own time, in our own world, even though it wasn't real. So I'm sure there's like, because we also saw people before when we were talking about the fairy dust that they give to guts to heal him, right?
Mm-hmm.
So people seem to believe fairies are there, and that's supernatural, right? So it's not like people don't believe in supernatural, right? But I just think about it like, our own medieval world. If I was a person there, I would believe maybe in fairies and stuff like that, even though they're not real. We know here that they are, but it's one thing about thinking there's like elves in the forest. There's another thing seeing an actual elf in the forest, right?
Yeah.
It's true.
And maybe this group isn't bound to the Midland army like the Hawks were. Maybe they're just like out in the wild somewhere that they never tried to hire, and now they are desperate enough to.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's why we haven't heard of them, because we're not following. We're only following the Hawks.
Yeah. But again, it's probably like what Joe said, to be honest. But I enjoy it more if I can make up my own canon reasons as to why it is not,
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Like, I would assume a lot of this is like made up as they went because of loose outlining and not planning 40 volumes with every tiny detail when you start serializing the thing. But
He's definitely like
yeah.
done some stuff and then been like, I shouldn't have done that. I mean, there's a deleted chapter. I keep bringing up because it's super fascinating. But he wrote the chapter and like printed it, and he's like, people shouldn't know that yet. Let's not put it in the collections. And then they didn't.
But we also know that he planned the outline. He thinks very far in advance. At least in the 2000s, he was thinking quite many years in advance. We do know that. Maybe at this point he wasn't, because he's just like, I don't know how long I'll get paid to do this. Right.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, there is definitely likely some making it up as you go, but then the person making it up as they went probably had to justify, like they probably had the same questions, hopefully, and they maybe justified it.
So you guys disagree with me, and you can't answer this yet, but I'm going to put it out there now. I don't think he really had a plan for what to do after this arc. So that's my theory, and that he got there and was like, what do I do now? And you can disagree with me, and we're going to have to read 15 more volumes before you can argue, say I'm right or wrong, because you haven't read that far yet. But I'm going to say it now. I don't think he really had a plan. I think he had a pretty good plan. He had a plan from the beginning, clearly, that covered 18 or 16 volumes, which is a lot, and I'm not putting him down, but I feel like he got there, and we'll see. Maybe.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what anyone else, opinion on this is, but I usually don't care what the author intended. Like, it's interesting to know, it might be some discussion and might be, again, interesting to figure out, but I usually don't care. And if I interpret a work in a different way than the author, that's just the way it is. So, we'll see what we think when we finish this arc. And I want to know what other people think about the ending of it, because it is, I'm sure we'll have differing opinions.
Yeah.
I think we should be documenting the style of the illustrations. So we have the eggheads, or kind of, don't trust them. Now we got beast looking things.
Yeah.
Maybe a little too lustful.
But Skullface is good.
Yeah, Skullface. Bearer of death.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, there's definitely going to be changes in style. I even think, Joe, after this arc, I think it's a different. It feels to me in my mind like it's a different style the next arcs, really, and then the modern style is different than that too. So, yeah, we can see, and once you go forward, it's interesting to just flip back to an old one and just compare, because then you see the big differences. They're just slowly changing.
Yeah, I sort of thought that there was an intermingling of the pre-golden arc. I don't know about style, but like the feeling with the golden age style art, because I remember everything felt like really dark and depressing in the first 2.5 volumes, and this whole volume wasn't like that, but there were pages where it felt like that, like especially in the dungeons, whenever the creatures appeared, it felt a
Yeah.
bit darker. Yeah.
Oh, the mask isn't attached to him. They can open it.
Yes, we can open it, right? We looked at him and we're like, well, let's not look at him anymore. Let's cover it up.
Yeah.
Better not.
Guts almost craps himself when he looks in there. Stay back. Don't look.
Yeah.
There's a moment when I think Guts and Casca were being affectionate with each other, and we sort of zoomed in on one eye of Griffith looking at them. I
Yeah.
felt terror mostly at that. But I don't know, I feel like maybe sympathy is warranted because maybe he's feeling left behind, that a lot
Mhm.
has changed since he's been in the dungeon. Or I might think that he would be, but mostly I just felt terror.
I mean, yeah, I don't know. Probably some sympathy is given. That should be given to him, given he's been tortured for a year.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
But it's also, if I'm allowed to go on another small tangent, I like you mentioned the eye, because it's like I interpreted it in a different way, like you alluded, and that reminded me of, I don't know who said it. It was some director or something in film, and he was talking to an actor about how to do a scene. I think something like that. And then the actor was like, "Oh, how do I portray this emotion or whatever?" Maybe it was two actors talking. I don't know. Anyways, the advice was like, don't act. Just have a plain, normal face, and the audience will read what they want to read on your face, and they will think it's deeper than if you actually, scrunch your face or did like this crazy expression, right? And that's the same as like when I saw that eye, that's what I think. It's like you can read anything you want into that, right? And it
Yeah.
will feel more powerful because you can read. You think it's like, oh, it's a subtle sort of emotion I can read, and you think it's more powerful that way.
Yeah.
It's the
Yeah, that is a great
imagination.
point. Yeah.
It's the imagination that's much more powerful than the actual
Yeah.
event. And you know who was very good at that was Alfred Hitchcock.
Mm.
So when you watch the what is it, the Psycho? Is it the Psycho? I think it is
Yeah.
the Psycho. You don't actually see what happens, but your mind sort of fills in the gaps for you, which is much more scarier than if you had seen the actual slashing itself. So yeah, our imagination is probably the.
This is how you portray trauma, right? You always, as a writer, someone's like, "Oh, I want to show the trauma this person went through as a kid," and I'm like, "You don't have to ever show the trauma they went through as a kid. Just show them as a broken adult. People will infer the trauma they had as a kid far more horribly than anything you're going to want to write."
Exactly.
And they're going to just they'll fill it in, and they do. People, they do.
Yeah, but like those scenes are, like you said, there's a contrast that you notice between the scenes with like the demons in the dark and the rest of the Golden Age arc, right? And like it feels like every time we see a demon in this arc, it feels like they shouldn't be there. Like they feel like the previous arc, the demons didn't feel out of place, at least to me, in the sort of how they were portrayed in the sort of world. They sort of felt like, the style was the same and there wasn't much contrast with the rest of the world. Well, here they feel like there's something, they're not usually there. Like it's like a demon appeared in our world, right? That would be quite different, right? And I think it adds more gravitas, I guess, to the scenes. I really like those scenes, and I really like when there's contrast in art, right? And you see like light and the dark, or we've seen before the king and the daughter, Casca and the princess. Like there's all this contrast, right? It makes it interesting.
Yeah.
I forget the character's name. One of the soldiers, when Guts does see Griffin and he goes on the 100 man killing spree again. She does mention, "Did I imagine it? But the soldiers' attacks seem to stop partway through." So maybe Guts is having a helping hand.
maybe.
Mm.
I mean,
have
again,
to-
we still don't know what the, free will and all that stuff is like. Can these demons manipulate the world so that it ends up where they want it to end up?
Mhm.
Like you said, it could be.
And Zod didn't seem to be in the same class of demons as these others so far, at least. At least based on the fact that he was trying to help Guts, and all the others he's met so far just tried to kill him. Zod seems different. The Skeleton Knight gave him some warning, but he didn't attack him. But then we think the Skeleton Knight was born of whatever sacrifice was made in those dungeons. So, yeah, it's interesting where they all come from. This,
Zod,
sorry, go
Zod
ahead.
feels more like the, what's it called? I don't know, like the noble antagonist archetype, right?
Mm,
Like he gives you a chance. He's fair about it. And the other demons are more like the deranged psycho enemy. Where they're just they're sort of a slave to their own instincts or whatever, right? So
yeah,
you kind of like Zod a bit. You're not like, I hate him.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think I'm largely neutral about him, which is nice because I dislike the others intensely.
Would hope so.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's
No, I
funny.
really like the slug dude.
Well, it's just interesting when he says withdraw, right? So, like, okay, what's going to happen with this one? And do we ever find out the name of that one elf? What does she look like?
I think there's two other demons that we've
Yeah,
shown that we haven't seen before.
Mm.
She's down here in this corner. Ooh.
Oh, can
Oh.
see. Yeah, like the moth sort of.
Yes, the moth-looking one. I don't
But
know if
yeah.
we ever
And then there's
found out.
also the scarab, the dung beetle demon, right? Because he makes a ball out of the corpses.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I think that's supposed to be like a dung beetle demon. I think because they make the balls of dung, right? And it looks kind of like a beetle. I think that's what it's sort of supposed to be.
Okay, yeah, I couldn't figure that out at all. I mean, when it's all tangled up like this, I don't spend too much time on figuring it out. I
Yeah,
probably
that
should,
one.
but
Yeah, that one.
yeah, that's why I walked past those brand marks. So this scene, someone, I think it's the princess telling them the story of that dungeon, and she mentions that 5 angels were sent to stop that king, the skeleton king, a skull king. That's what she calls him here. So I wondered if those 5 angels became the god's hand in, or if they're just like 5 different angels. But then someone's already surprised that there were 4 and not 5.
Maybe there were 5 at some point.
Maybe there will be 5 later on.
Yeah,
There will be
maybe
5
they can die. They can be defeated. Maybe, or maybe 5 is like how do I say? 5 is like a symbolic number, just like 3 in our world or other numbers, and it's just maybe I don't know.
Yeah.
Actually, I'll try and remember that and see if we notice 5 in other places.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, we're just getting more. I think we're just getting more questions for now. No answers, right?
Yeah.
The one thing for sure, though, is Guts still has both hands. When I get to the end of every volume, I'm like, oh, he still has his hands. Okay.
And both eyes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was one scene where I thought maybe he'd lost his eye. I forget after fighting whom. But then he came back with both eyes intact.
So he's still whole.
Yeah.
He's not broken yet.
Yeah.
So predictions from Dolores and Barsha. Will he have his arm at the end of the Golden Age arc? Yes or no?
No.
I don't think so. That's why it's called the Golden Age, right?
After that, he doesn't have his
After that, it's like, yeah, it's not the Golden Age anymore.
The Golden Age wasn't about friendship and whatever time he had with the band. It was because he had both his hands.
Remember when I used to clap? Those were good days. When I used to clap.
Yeah, I was a whole
I
human.
could clap.
Maybe the next arc is the platinum age or the diamond age. Who knows? It gets better.
Mhm.
But I used Auntie Google, and I know that that's not true.
Maybe it has to go bad for a bit before getting better.
Mm.
Well, if it's all good, then who wants to keep reading, right? We need some drama in the story.
You have plenty of that.
Well, at least now we know. At least we know part of the trauma that I guess made Griffith do what he's going to do. We still don't know what he's going to do. We sort of know when he ends up, and we know that usually there's trauma involved, and there's reason why people do it. It's not just randomly, and you know, I don't know. I can't imagine. I can try and imagine what it would be like going from one of the more beloved people in a kingdom. Everybody loves you. You're powerful. To being tortured for a whole year until you can't even move. I'm sure that does something to someone. You know, I'm sure it's not even the strongest of wills, which we know Griffith has. I'm sure he's not unshaken by what happened to him. And at that point, if we think back about, you know, his dream, he has something he wants to achieve. I mean, how can he achieve it now, right? It's like he's a broken man. He's nothing. How can he achieve whatever he wants to achieve, right?
Well, and he's vain too, right? I mean, his looks is what has gotten him to the point that he's gotten, right? Because he's good looking. Yeah, he's beautiful. People are like, "Ooh, look how beautiful he is," and now he's just kind of like ugly.
A corpse.
Yeah.
Do you think we're supposed to? So we know he's gonna. We have all the pieces, right? We don't know the details, but we know he's gonna sort of betray Guts, right? That's obvious. I think. I hope I didn't spoil anything, right? But like we don't know the details, but so and we know Guts is going to be nothing but loyal to him, and he's going to betray Guts. Do you feel like we're supposed to be feeling sympathetic towards Griffith at this point? Sort of feeling bad enough for him that on some level we're willing to forgive it? And I ask because I don't.
I don't.
But I think we're supposed to. I don't because I feel like he did this to himself.
Yeah.
But I think we're supposed to feel some sense of he's been traumatized because why else would he be traumatized this badly? In you know the year of torture, you know, maimed in every conceivable way, you know, it's like and I guess we're supposed to feel bad for him for it. I think.
So I think I don't forgive him. That's not there, and I don't think it will be. But I feel more sympathy for him. I think what happened so far was I was letting what I know we came from color my opinion of Griffith. I expected him to just be this ruthlessly ambitious person who eventually, when everything else fails, probably sacrificed Guts and his closest friends to get to, you know, become one of the God's hand. But now the perspective I have is, you know, if he had not been tortured for a year, maybe he wouldn't have done any of that. Maybe, you know, the Band of Hawks would still exist, and they'd be conquering worlds together, and Griffith would still be this beloved leader, probably. But because of what happened to him, he's maybe either he wants to still fulfill his ambitions, maybe he's out to get vengeance in some way, or just wants to burn the world because of what happened to him. But now I think I'm a lot more disposed to feel sympathy towards him. I don't necessarily forgive, because like I think that sacrificing your friends, like whatever the reason, probably not forgivable, but I feel like I can maybe try to understand. Like he's not the same person that I thought he might have been from where we came. at the beginning. So in that sense, my perspective on him has changed, but not to the point where I like and understand. I think I like what he was before now a lot more. I was disposed to look cynically at everything he did, but now I don't, because we know the turning point that probably led to the events later on.
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm gonna be in disagreement with everyone over the course of this read through, in that I don't actually hate Griffith. I mean, I like him as a character, and I don't know. I usually like to take the part of villains in the books I read. I think it's fun, and I like to root for them, and like to imagine what it would be like, why they're doing the things they're doing. So I kind of like villains usually, and that's one of the reasons. And maybe it's because I think of myself a bit of a selfish and weak person. So if I was put in the situation where I'm like in front of hell, and I can decide, am I going to sacrifice my loved ones for immortality, or am I going to eternal hell? Would I be strong enough to do the right choice? I don't know. I don't know. It might be a toss-up. Might not even be a toss-up. Might be 90-10 maybe. I don't know.
Dan, I like your perspective. Me too. I think that's the conversation, right? I mean, it gives a different perspective, and it's not just like beat the one person, but someone's like, hey, how about we look at it from this other perspective? I think that you could be the devil's advocate, and I think it challenges us to look at situations from both views, right? And it just adds to the overall conversation.
It's probably a remnant of my edgy teen personality, just a little bit, like the dark evil lords, and look cool in their black suits or whatever. I don't know. It's just like when I read The Lord of the Rings, I'm like, it would be interesting if Sauron won,
Sauron would have the trains running on time, right? None of this living in the forest. He'd have trains. We'd have like disposable toothbrushes. I mean, stuff would happen.
Yeah, but I think it's going to be at least an interesting discussion when we get further, and there's going to be a lot of, because we're going to see a bit of what Griffith does and why he does it and other things. And yeah, it's also a bit of a, sometimes like realist versus idealist perspective, or utilitarian versus, some other perspectives. It's a bit about that sort of stuff too. People like to read books about the romantic side because they want to think they're like that, or that the world works that way. Maybe they're right. I don't know. Maybe I'm just a cynic.
Or maybe they want the world to be better and they want it to be like that.
Yeah.
Well, and the real world is not black and white. It's like varying different shades of gray. So,
or is it though? I mean, I don't know. Maybe
it depends.
It is black and white. Depends what your philosophy is.
Yeah. Depends on the facts at hand, right? So.
Yeah, for some people, the world is very black and white, right? They know what's right or know what's wrong, and it's not gray. So,
but
I don't know. People like to think right. People like to think that the gray perspective is more nuanced and more correct, but it doesn't have to be necessarily. It's a bit of a relativistic approach to. It's a meta approach to philosophy a bit, but
yeah, the answer as always is it depends.
That's exactly it.
It depends.
Yeah.
Does anyone else want Casca to live past this so that she meets Puck and we see what happens when they talk?
Yeah.
Joe shaking his head. I hope she lives. I don't think she will.
Casca and Guts are such a cute couple.
I know,
right?
But we know a lot happens to Guts, and so I just don't. I would love to see her continue on, but I don't. I think her time is short.
Guts can have nice things. So
No.
Unfortunate. Yeah.
Guts can't have nice things. That's a classic quote.
Oh, that's
Maybe in the end he will.
terrible.
Yeah, because not even me and Joe know how it's ended, right?
Mm.
Is it actually going to end up with Guts being happy? We still don't know.
We
I
can
like
hope.
the yoga studio ending.
No.
That's canon for me now.
the yoga studio's canon.
Sword yoga, all the different poses with the sword, you hold it out. Calisthenics.
Uh-huh. And he teaches it to others and encourages them to have their own
Executive
large
retreats
sword.
up in the mountains, executive retreats. They all swing it at logs coming down. over a
Uh-huh.
waterfall or something.
Exactly.
Get in shape. He gets Fortune 500 company, executive.
Yeah, and he's drinking his smoothies. You know, he can have his power
Have a
smoothies.
smoothie bar, a little extra charge.
Yeah.
High protein.
Maybe it's going to end up like that.
I hope so. I want to root for him and see that there is some hope and redemption.
I think it's going to be a bittersweet ending, but I'm not sure. It could end up being with a dojo and swords.
As long,
It very well be.
yeah, as long as it does not end like season 8 of Game of Thrones, we will be okay.
We do know the series didn't end. Like Kentaro Miura died. Like that's not a
Yeah.
spoiler. Well, I guess it's a spoiler, but I don't know. I'm sorry.
But we know how he wanted it to end, and we're going to finish it the way. Yeah, because the guy that's doing it right now, which I forgot his name again, he is finishing based on a conversation he had in which Kentaro Miura outlined the whole arc up to the ending with him. So it is going to end the way he's like roughly the way he intended it. Maybe some details are going to be different, but the rough details should be the same, unless he lied, which he might. I don't know.
I would.
Or maybe he changed his mind, because I believe this conversation was 3 or 4 years before he died or something. So he could have changed his mind in between about what the ending was going to be.
I'll take what he thought 3 or 4 years ago. I'll accept that as canon. That's fine with me, as long as Miura actually said it, which we'll never know, right? Because it was always, I'm sure, in private. But
yeah.
Who's getting redeemed? That's the question. Does Guts need redemption? Has he done anything wrong? I don't think he has. Right? I can't imagine Griffith this being a redemption arc for Griffith. I can't imagine after what happens. I can't imagine that's possible. Maybe I'm wrong.
Maybe not.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Imagination is insufficient to the task.
Maybe he sacrifices his life. Wouldn't that be nice? Griffith gives his life. I'm so sorry for all the wrongs I've done. Let me give my life.
Yeah, I really can't.
but only the maelstrom is left for him. I suppose that's, yeah.
I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I don't know if it's super relevant, but what are everyone's thoughts on incomplete works because the author died? Do you like it because you can think about whatever you want about the ending, or does it frustrate you?
Frustrating.
I believe the ending informs the quality of the work. So, for example, I think Lost was Battlestar Galactica, the remake, to me was awful. Even though if you just watch the first season, it's fine. Because the ending ruins it for me. It retroactively makes the whole thing meaningless by the way they ended it. So once I saw that, I'm like, okay, this is a crappy show. And I'm not. People disagree, and that's fine. But so to me, when it's unfinished, you don't really know how good it was. But that's me.
I don't care about endings that much. Most of the books I read, I don't remember how they ended. So honestly, I genuinely can't remember how many of my favorite books ended. So it's mostly for me the process of reading and getting to wherever I can, I suppose. So
Journey, not the destination.
And I also like the ending of Lost.
like with Lost, there's all this cool stuff that happened early, and you thought it was like, oh, it's gonna tie in. It's gonna be some super cool story, and most of these threads were never meant anything. And once I realized that the authors admitted that, the writers admitted that in interviews. Oh, most of the stuff didn't mean anything. We never had a plan for that. It made those early episodes less good to me than they felt. I felt like I was being teased somehow. Like if the hints don't pay off, they were cheap. If they do pay off, then I'm satisfied. Then the whole thing is good in my memory. But if they don't pay off, if they were never going to pay off, it's all cheap, you know? So I don't know. But
I think I'm very much in your camp, Joe. It's like, if an end, you need, like, there's a lot of series which go on forever and people think they're great. I don't know, like, One Piece or whatever. You can argue that they're great or not. But I think a lot of it is propped up by the fact that they're not ending it. And then, you know.
Well, hold off on One Piece judgment because he has said he's going to end it and he has a plan and there is progress in the storyline. So that might just be a very long, like, I don't think that's meant to be just repetitive going on forever until he gets tired. I mean, he said that there's a plan. And maybe he's lying, but, you know. I mean, Naruto had an ending. That's one of my favorites. And that had progress. Things happened and changed at every stage. You know, if you read every set of 10 volumes, it's different. Like, stuff happens. Dresden, things change. I'm trying to think about, you know, I don't know.
I know, but that's one of the reasons why a lot of, for example, Marvel comics don't do it for me, because they don't have resolutions really. Like final capstones. Yeah, I know. It's the model, but that doesn't give you a satisfied conclusion. And
because if you're writing Daredevil, you can't tell his complete story arc and finish because someone else has to write the next issue. Like, you're not allowed to. That's what's so different about manga in general from the American comics or from American mainstream comics, right? You don't have that. You know, Alone with a Cub, it could end because those guys owned it. No one else is going to like write volume 28 Alone with a Cub or whatever.
Yeah, and you can judge it as one piece of work when it's ended, right? And and like you said, I remember when I was a huge Harry Potter fan, I read the whole series probably 8 or 9 times, maybe probably even more. Before the last book, I read the last book one time, and the ending like ruined everything for me, and I haven't looked at it since. It literally completely, and in some other cases, the ending was just, I was satisfied and went back to read it again because I just want to read it again and get to the ending again. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I cared about. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Rasha.
I think Harry Potter is my example as well when I cared about what happens next, how is this going to end, and also because I think she had hyped up the ending so much that I know what the last line is, what the last page is, and so on. So so that one I think I remembered and cared about the ending a lot, but since and like the waiting was so painful for the next book that I decided I'm not going to read an unfinished series anymore. But I changed that in the last couple of years. But yeah, I think since then I don't necessarily remember caring about endings all that much. Yeah, it's interesting. Sorry, Steve, you were saying something.
Oh, no, I was going to ask, is next week the week that you're out of town?
Yes.
Okay.
So we're going to do another 2-week interval between the next one?
Yeah, we can do 2.
Yeah,
Rasha will be traveling.
Cool.
Yeah, especially because I think the next volumes are quite dense and interesting stuff happens. So, you know, probably want to have Varsha's opinion on what you think about them.
And maybe I'll pay more attention to the tangled images this time. I cannot believe I missed those brand marks.
I will join whenever I can, but I have to like pick up my stepdaughter from college in a few weeks, and then I am on a cruise for 2 weeks. So carry on without me. I'm going to be in the Baltic.
Joe, you have to cancel the cruise. You have Berserk to talk about.
Get internet access.
We have been planning this for like 2 years. No joke. You're going to see. And they keep, did I tell you guys this? They keep taking stops off our trip. Like every few weeks. Because we were supposed to go from like Denmark to St. Petersburg. And they're like, oh, you're not going to St. Petersburg about a year ago. Right? Obvious reasons. And then they're like, you're not going to Estonia. And then the whole NATO thing, and like, you're not going to Finland.
Wow.
They keep like pulling back. Like, we'll take you to Berlin, but you're not going to Finland. So they don't want a bunch of tourists getting bombed, you know. So we keep getting stuff retracted. It's fine. I mean, we're seeing great stuff. I'm not upset, but it's just, we thought we'd have to worry about like COVID canceling things, and it turned out it's Russia.
Jesus. Not to add any stress to your shoulders, but how's the deadline coming?
I'm good. I passed 50,000 words today, and I have all the middle. I have all the
Nice.
middle. I have all the middle threads plotted loosely. So I have a bizarre writing structure, which makes it very hard. so hopefully I can get it all to tie together, and we'll get to the dinosaurs, and yeah, we'll see.
Wait,
But,
is this the fourth hybrid helix book?
so
Dinosaurs, did you say?
I have a fantasy novel that's in I need to finish another revision probably and get it to editing and just release it. I was trying to get it to some publishers and I just got rejected this week. So I have to do one more rewrite of that, but that's done. Like it's done. It just needs to be cleaned up. And then I am writing the fourth hybrid helix novel, and that has to go to my editor. I have an editor. I have a slot with my regular line editor who I love. But it's July. I have to get it to her by July. So I have very little time to finish it, get it to hopefully a few beta readers, get some feedback, clean it up a little bit, and then pray. But the more I'm atypical. The more I write, the cleaner my first drafts are, and the harder they are to write. But the closer they are to my final product. Every book, they get closer. So I mean, my grammar's always off, and I always need line editing, but the structure
doesn't matter.
Yeah, but that's easy. So this one is, it's every book. You've got to pull in all these different, because all these setups and all these characters, motivations, got to pull it all into every book. So now it's like 3 books worth of lore. I've got to make sure is all consistent. It's a brain twister.
Sounds like it. So we'll be taking next week off. We'll see everyone back in 2 weeks. Dolores, where can people find you if they want to contact you?
They can find me on page 2. I'm there. I post and I hunt around in the background. But if you love to have a conversation with me, drop me a line.
Joe?
I'm on page showing occasionally. I'm on Twitter constantly at Joe Byrne1. And I have my own, go to my website, jcmburn.com. You can find my books on Amazon. And my YouTube channel is JCM Burn, I think. I don't know. If you search for JCM Burn, you'll find my channel. It's not that hard. There's probably a link. Or a handle. I don't know. I
like that it's been about 5 weeks, and every time it's still, I don't know the name of my channel.
Nothing clever. I'm not reading by any geographic entity. There's no weather in it. It's just my name.
And Dan, what about you?
You can find me also on the Patreon forum. I don't post a lot, but I'm around. And you cannot find my books anywhere because I haven't written any yet. So, unfortunate.
Farsha?
And I'm the one with the channel with the weather and geographic entity. You can also find me on Patreon, and other ways to reach me are on the About page.
I don't know how writers can even open Twitter, because I would not get it. I mean, it seems like it's just a pitfall for writers. I don't know how they do it.
It's miserable. Sucks up all my whole life.
Yeah. But thanks everyone. So we'll see everyone here in 2 weeks and discuss volume 11.
Sounds good. Bye guys.